Alright everyone, let's go ahead and get started since we'll try to get through 5 or hopefully 6 of the code walkthrough presentations today. Just really quick announcement for me before we get started. One, remember the course evaluations, we're going to do that in class this upcoming Tuesday, so you don't need to do that beforehand. We'll spend some time in class on Tuesday for y'all to fill it out, and we'll talk about sort of like feedback for the class. The last thing is exploration activity 3. So y'all might have remembered or noticed that we have the final skill demonstration that's going to be on Thursday, okay? Basically, this is going to be very similar to the practice skill demo where we gave y'all the idle-lib code base and had y'all answer a few questions and maybe complete a couple of tasks. So I'll be going over like the answer for that on Tuesday. I'll maybe show y'all what we sort of expect you to do in terms of the code navigation, in terms of the task modification. But this final skill demo that's going to happen 1 week from today is going to be on a different code base that's not the idle-lib code base, okay? And it's actually going to be on the matplotlib code base. But this is a very large code base. Okay, me even telling you that it's on this code base before, I don't think y'all should go home and try to study the code base or understand it. There's not really much you can do to study or prepare for this. Hopefully you just have sort of picked up some of the code comprehension techniques that we've learned, and you'll be able to use Google and stuff like that during the final skill demonstration. But just to make sure everybody is on the same understanding of what matplotlib is, there's just a couple small activities that we're gonna have you do using matplotlib, just creating a simple plot and just finding the online documentation. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody knows what the actual product is, what matplotlib is, so that it's sort of somewhat fair that we're gonna just ask you all to sort of make a couple small modifications to this code base. Okay. Don't stress out too much about this. It's not like a final exam. It's going to be part of the exploration activity grade. We'll have a few questions, a few small tasks for you to complete, and based on how many you get done, we'll probably assign completion percentage that way. Yeah, you got a question?
What is the thing you mentioned, demonstration, final demonstration?
Yeah, the final skill demonstration. This is going to be in class on Thursday.
What do we do?
It's just the practice skill demonstration. If you were here for that, it was just completing a few questions on the idle-lib code base. I think it happened, on this Tuesday.
Is it on that platform again? Or
yeah, it's a much better thing than but that was a test run for what's happening now, so we definitely learned from that mistake, basically.
What was the survey
Yeah, it was bad. There was some really heated answers, but we learned from it, and I'll sort of pass the message on to other professors.
But we're still using it?
We're not using that. So PragerLearn has a lot of different ways to administer online exam. We did the full virtual machine desktop, which was super slow. That was super bulky. This is going to be a browser-based VS Code, so it has all the things with normal speed and
code server or something.
Yeah, something like that. I think. Yeah. Oh, you're familiar with something like that. Yeah, I'm just getting used to PragerLearn with this. Yeah.
So, wouldn't it be helpful to study a code base, but just the different techniques?
Yeah, I wouldn't study it's a really big code base. I think it's 5 or 6 times larger than the idle-lib code base, and we're just going to ask you about one small part of it. So I think it's probably a waste of time. You can look through the code base if you want, but I think the more helpful thing is just looking at what the practice skill demo had, and I'll go over the answers on Tuesday, so you'll sort of know. It's just going to be using very similar techniques to what we've done in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the class. You won't have Copilot though. That's going to be one thing.
Are we going to have GPT?
You can use online resources, so you could use ChatGPT if you want. Yeah.
It just more helpful to understand the different techniques throughout class.
Yeah, definitely. I think the techniques, the stuff we learned for all the program comprehension unit will probably be the most useful for that. Did you have a question?
Just GPT.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can use online documentation, Google, stuff like that. Any other questions? Come on, let me start. No other questions? Okay, cool. So this is due before class on Thursday, okay? The skill demo is on Thursday, so complete this short activity by Thursday. Besides that, we'll go ahead and get started. Just keep an eye on this code walkthrough presentation. I might not be able to remind every team asking questions, but make sure you check like which team is presenting and if your team is supposed to be asking questions, right? Cool. Let's go ahead and get started. You'll need to get down here.
Hello, binary baddies. We will be explaining Zoom height. I'm Brianna.
Isabella.
I'm Julia. So what is Zoom height? Zoom height maximizes the editor window. So I'll give a quick demonstration of that. So you go to the options menu and then click zoom height, go rescale, and then there you go, maximize. So some of the benefits are improving readability and ease of navigation. It also enhances code accessibility, and then it's also super convenient for the user because it automatically adapts to the screen height that's given.
So we have this little diagram. This is just to give you an overview of what the main part of the code base we were focusing on. So down here in this little corner is more of the like button and key binding stuff. And then the green boxes are more of the functionality. So we just listed some important methods that are used to implement this feature. Most of it uses the tkinter library, and yeah, I think that's all we really wanted to say about the diagram. I guess it works similarly to one of the projects that we worked on, where the button is kind of bound to the method that's in zoomHeight.py in the editor. So there's an instance of zoomHeight in the editor and vice versa in order to get the dimensions of everything. So yeah.
Awesome. And then I'll kind of talk more about the specific functions that are involved in the core functionality. Let's see. So this is basically the Zoom height class, which kind of contains most of the functionality in one spot. So kind of at the beginning, there's importing for the regional expression system, then tkinter, which is pretty important, as Bella mentioned. And also definition for a custom class for the basically kind of machine for gathering error that could come in to play a little bit later. And so for Zoom height, there's initial kind of installation of this empty dictionary for max height and y coordinates. It's like a kind of class level variable basically. And so initialization basically just defines the editor window, and then the top the editor window, which basically like is just kind of the shell containing the actual GUI and the editor window itself. It's kind of what's involved directly in the resizing. And then so for Zoom height event, this is what's bound to the menu option. And essentially what it does is here it just calls the kind of zoom height method, which is really the main functionality. If zoom is none, so if there's an error it's involved.
Could y'all just make it bigger by doing like maybe like command plus or something for the font to be bigger? Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, nice.
So essentially if this returns false or none, if it's none, then it rings the bell. Otherwise, basically the menu status is updated to be restore if it's currently zoomed, or otherwise if it was not zoomed and this is not returned true, then it's allows you to zoom in. And yeah, kind of the main functionality in here, basically first gets the dimensions. If the state is not normal, then it returns none. And this basically just happens if there's some sort of kind of specifications for like maximize or full screen windows. And then here it's use a helper function to get max height and y coordinate and throws an exception error if that's not possible. And then if the height is currently not equal to the maximum, then it sets it to the maximum and otherwise sort of resets it to the initial, kind of restoring the height. And here, I won't go super in depth with all these methods, but basically it's kind of just looks at the different systems. So like for Windows, for example, there's certain errors, or for like other kinds of VMs where there might not be a tuned state or kind of other specifications. And yeah, WN geometry basically just uses this WN geometry from the tkinter top level and matches whatever the geometry string is, kind of extracting the necessary parts for the width, height, y, and x coordinates, and kind of turns into a nice tuple. And then likewise, kind of the inverse of that is taking the top and geometry that were calculated here and then kind of resetting them into a string that is taken in by the WN geometry and then kind of set to the dimensions. And yeah, I think let's move on to the debugging portion.
Yes, so we have a couple breakpoints set at, one should be hit pretty much every time we run it, and the next one should be hit when we're trying to restore the window. So I'll start that. Okay. So, sorry. Okay. So I'm just making a new window. And now we're just gonna try to hit the breakpoint. Yay, okay. So, as Julia was explaining, this this line is a helper function that's defined within the zoom height class. So what I'm going to do is step into it so we can check out what's going on here. Oh, I stepped over it. I'm sorry. Can you go back? Just do this. I can just restart it. Okay. All right, so now we're in the get max height and y coordinate method. And the main thing I wanted to do was show this screen dimensions part. So as you can see, we're using more tkinter methods here. The winfo screen width and screen height. So I guess something that I did to kind of understand this code base was step into these. And it gives a pretty good description of what the function does. So it's just returning the number of pixels of the width and the height respectively for the different methods. And yeah, so once we return, you can see the variables. We got 1920, and I'll just step over the next couples just to see. So now we have the screen dimensions are properly set, and I'll continue to the next section.
Okay, so now we're going to do experimental changes.
Okay. So my process for this was kind of going through the zoom height function and kind of modifying each one of these variables that was set in there, like the width, height, and x. And first trying to figure out what their functionality was, and then next trying to break them. So I'm going to start off with the easier ones, which is going to be X and max Y. These are going to be responsible for the positioning of the window on the screen after you call zoom height. And these values can take negative numbers and positive numbers, and they're kind of sort of unbounded in code. So you can put in like a really big number for that, and it will go up to the screen like a certain amount, but it's kind of bounded by the operating system in that you won't just like completely lose a window. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then moving on to the width and the max height. These are responsible for the size of the display after calling zoom height. Obviously, they can't take negative numbers because that wouldn't make sense. But these are also sort of bounded by the operating system. So what's interesting is if you do width to be too big, you'll actually get a segmentation fault, which kind of indicates to you that it's like the operating system that's going to take the final say on how much you can go out. So we'll just run that and see those changes real quick. Alright, so we'll see those changes that we made right here. As you can see, we moved the window over, made it really small. Yeah, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about the final variable here, which is going to be this height. It's kind of interesting because it seems like it's not really used anywhere for setting the window geometry. So when I try to set a value right here and then call it, it should really have no effect on the code from what it seems. So yeah, we're going to call it zoom height, and it's going to shrink the window again. But the problem is this restore height never ends up working, and the restore height button never changes. And I can explain that to you. Because of this height not equal to max height right there, when they're not equal, and if I set the height up there to be equal to like whatever number you want, they're never going to be equal, so it's always going to set to that same amount, and this function returns true. So it's always going to return true, and the button's always going to stay on restore height and never go to the else statement, which is our reset when it's passed with a blank string. And it turns to false, you get the new button. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, and that's all we have for you. Any questions? Yeah.
Why did you guys choose zoom height for your
Because we originally thought it was about our other project, so at the last minute, we changed it to zoom height, because that was the only one available.
That was kind of interesting when I worked with different operating systems, like we saw like Windows and pretty other quirky, and they said, or esoteric, instead of the kind of the code-based comment. It's like interesting, how does it actually know, like how do they screen users, any problems, like special cases, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I have a question. So, I remember when I was coding to make a UI for a text editor, one of my biggest problems was that the text wouldn't get smaller and basically adjust with the screen. Do you guys happen to know which part of this code is going to adjust the text maximum number of characters with the screen, or it's not even in this one?
We actually didn't try that.
Okay.
That's a good idea. I'm assuming that's going to be something within the text widget itself that modifies it, but I'm not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have you tried using this feature in WSL? Like that method?
No.
I have Linux on my laptop, so it actually didn't work on my machine.
That's my experience as well.
Yeah.
Like I wonder what happened to it. Like on Linux platform. They just gave up developing.
I'm not sure. It was kind of frustrating to to not be able to
Run it on your own.
run it on my own
Yeah.
computer, but yeah. So I feel that.
It's kind of like a weak functionality, so maybe they escape that.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's have the group switch now to make sure everyone can do
I didn't see this.
But then when I said,
Alright, let's go ahead and start so we can make sure we get through as many as we can. Yeah. This one is like this? Or you mean lower than right? Yes?
So we're demoing.
Alright, everyone, let's go ahead and quiet down and we'll start with this presentation.
So we're demoing the file saving feature and loading files. We'll start off by a quick outline. And so one thing to notice is that the IO menu, the IO binding class is instantiated for each editor window so that each window has its own saving and loading file functionality. And then these are the functions that we'll be walking through. This is a bit of a messy user flow diagram, but we start off with creating an editor window, and then the user can either choose to open an existing file or just start off with a blank editor. And then if the user tries to run the file without saving, it will trigger the ask save dialog, which will ask you to save a file before running it. And if the file is untitled, then it'll just save the file for you and ask for a name. If it's not untitled, then it'll just run the file. If a user clicks save, then it also checks if the file is untitled and goes through the same process. If a user tries to close an editor without saving their edits, then the maybe save function is called, and make sure you want to exit without saving. And then we'll go to the save feature.
Alright, so I'm gonna demonstrate one of these potential user flow paths. And yeah. Okay. Oh, there we go. And Control plus. Command. Oh. Okay. Is that big enough for you guys? Alright, cool. So we're in io-menu.py and I want. Okay, did I actually close the?
No, swipe to the right.
Oh.
What do you want?
Yeah. Okay. No, I opened the global search to, and then for some reason it disappeared, but whatever. We're gonna do a little global search to find the ask save dialog, so ask save. And oh look, there's the ask save dialog in runscript.py. So like we open that, then the ask save dialog right there. And now let's try to run idle in a debugger, and wow, that's tiny. Is there a way to make that bigger?
Yeah, you can click the python.exe in the top left, like right next to where your cursor is.
Oh, and Okay, and yeah, I don't usually use Mac, so.
Go to settings and then make that size thing like.
This is like 20. Okay, there we go. That's beautiful. All right, and I open a new file, and let's say I want to, I don't know, print Goku. And oh, I didn't save the file, but I want to run the module. So now the debug is gonna the assay dialog is gonna trigger, and you see the message in one of the local variables, and I step over a little bit, and now it's gonna ask source must be saved, and I'm gonna say yes, I want it to be saved, and confirm it's true. So now we're gonna go all the way to the save as. Now we're gonna get the save as function triggered here, and I'm just gonna type the name of the function. I'll call it Goku, and now the file is gonna run. So the save as function is triggered right here, and it calls the as save file function first, which is that little box where you type in the name of the file you want to name your file as, and then it'll call these write file functions here, which I think I'll let my partners explain that.
I will be talking about maybe save. So yeah, maybe save is used to check if the current file has been saved before closing it. And if the file hasn't been saved, it prompts the user with a dialog box, basically asking if they want to save the file before closing it. So I can just show what this looks like in IDLE. So it's basically like this dialog box. So going back to the function, these first two lines, basically just check if the file has already been saved, and if so, it just returns yes. And this is the message that shows up in the dialog box, asking do you want to save before closing, and if the file has a name, it'll be added to the message, and otherwise it'll just be this untitled document. And confirm is basically what displays the dialog box, and it has the buttons yes, no, and cancel. So if the user presses yes, then it tries to save file by calling self.saveNot. And then if it isn't saved, reply is just cancel. And then otherwise, reply is just yes. And LF conformance none is if the user presses cancel, then reply is just cancel. And else, reply is just no, meaning that they press no. And then self.text.focusSet just sets the focus back to the text widget, and then the reply is just return. So, yeah.
So for my question, I'll be going over the save, this definition, right? So I know throughout this idle menu, there are a lot of functions that have save in the keyword, which is kind of confusing. But basically, this function is like the second to last function that Python the idle calls before actually writing the file to your computer. So you can see here, if not self file name, This is basically checking if the file name has a path or it doesn't. So if I were to run this and hit a new file. So since this is a new file that I haven't saved to my computer, according to the code, it should prompt this save as method to pop up, which it should do if I press save. Yeah, so this pop-up is what save as is. So then if I save this file, and then I try to make another change, and I save it again, according to this code, this else block, it actually just executes this write file and ignores this. So if I save it again, there shouldn't be any pop-up, which there isn't. And then now if we go to the write file, this file is kind of interesting. So this is in charge of actually writing the contents onto the file that you save on your computer. This first line here is in charge of fixing the new lines. So basically, when you write any file in Python, the standard for new lines is this \n. Oops, sorry. This \n. But in other operating systems, they have different standards. So like in Windows, it's \r/n. In Linux, it's \n. And in Mac, it's \r. So what this function does is that it goes through the entire file and replaces the new line character with whatever is appropriate for your current operating system. And then once you have done that, this next function here encodes your entire code into bytes to write onto your computer through Unicode. And then once it has encoded and fixed all the new lines, this try block actually executes writing it. So we can make an experimental change here by adding this this save button. So if I were to rerun it, let's say I make another new file, and then I save it as this1.line. If I were to reopen this file, we should see that it wrote an additional line, which should be, yeah, so it writes this extra, and then that's it for write file.
And then lastly, we'll go over load file. So this is when you want to open a new file that's already existing on your computer. Okay, so first we have a double try catch block. Firstly, we try to read in the file and get its encoding and the end of line convention, as we covered earlier. And if any exceptions are thrown, such as the encoding error, so if there are characters that Python doesn't recognize, then it will throw this error and try to fix itself. There's also another error where we have an OS error. So these are errors like file is not found. For the GUI, I don't think that error can come up, but if you use something like the CLI, then that certainly can appear. And then once we read in the file, Python will check its end of line convention to make sure that everything is the same. So like we mentioned earlier with the \r/n. And then once all that is clear, we delete anything that's existing in the window, and then we set the file name of the file that we loaded in, and we set the encoding and the end of line convention. And then, yeah, we just insert all the contents of the file onto the text editor, and we set the undo list. So if you press Ctrl-Z, then nothing will happen. And then we just set the insert position and then update the recent file list. And that's pretty much it. Any questions?
For the, I think Joshua was covering it, the new line, or yeah, removing the new lines. Is that just like the new lines that you type explicitly in the editor window, or is that just like if you happen to have like multiple lines, those will have like new lines or something?
I think any new line characters you type and any ones that the item will automatically adds to it, it just converts it.
That's it.
Yeah. Any other questions? Sure.
arguably the more important question, but how did you guys get inspiration to do this feature then?
One of our features for the group project was to run a file without saving it. So this was just something I was already we already were familiar with. Yeah. So,
I didn't quite see, but does idlib by itself have does it flag for any invalid file names? Like for example, in Windows, they don't allow you specific characters for file names. Does idlib also do the same thing?
I'm not sure if that's handled within idlib or within the operating system, because like you said, for Windows, it might differ from OS to OS, so I'm not sure if idlib handles that. Do you have a question?
We'll just end it there, unless anyone else has any questions. Okay. Okay, cool.
The feature that we're going to talk about is changing color, and our team name is TabCap. Does anyone know what that stands for? No? Okay. It stands for problem exists between keyboard and chair. We're so basically we're going to talk about.
Sorry, before we get, can you just make it a little bit bigger, like by doing the Python EXE thing? Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, for everyone presenting today, actually, if you're going to use your laptop, maybe we could just do this beforehand even.
Okay. So, as we can see right here, the comments are red, and Python keywords are orange, and function definitions are blue, string are green, and then built-in functions are purple, and the shell output will be blue, and the arrow will be red. So actually we can change the color. So we click on one of those and then choose colorful. We can change the color to whatever you want.
Okay, I'm gonna show you guys a little demo. So for our demo, we decided to use Copilot completely. We're not gonna, because we thought it would be a good experiment just to see, let's say somebody who didn't know Control Shift F and they just didn't know how to use Copilot to see how they would go step by step and figure out what to do. So, and then we'll compare later with that.
Can we just try to make it a little bit bigger so we'll try to read the thing. I think like Command plus on VS Code. Awesome, thank you.
Okay, there you go. So I have my first question here. So the first question is going to be, so we knew that there are some, it's going to color def and classes. So we're just asking what feature does that. So and where it's located. So let's ask that and let's see what it says. Wait. Now it says it's something regarding colorizer and compare highlight depth. And next thing I might want to know is, oh, how are they both related together? So I can ask that next. Let's say. Sorry. let's see what it says.
We're doing this live just because it's non-deterministic, so we want to see what it does this time.
Because every time we do it, it's different, so, you know. So for this one, it says, no, it prints out a bunch of gibberish. So, maybe, let's go to it, let's see what it says. It says, all works together, blah, 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 and it's saying color schemes, yeah, I don't even know what this is saying. Let's try it again. Let's put this in. It's acting. Wow. Okay. So, but we can try something else. So, like, we can go to the color delegator function and see how does it work in there. So we can say how does I have realized one thing: if you don't put workspace, it doesn't print out anything relevant. So. Okay, this time it is not printing gibberish. So, the color delegator class and the colorizer.py just prints the syntax highlight, blah blah blah, and let's see. And it says that polarizer name is where the actual colorizing happens, and stuff like that. But yeah, and we can go through, and maybe we can go through more on how, like, we're gonna change it in the window options.
Yeah. So one of the features was the custom color that you could add. So one of the questions that we did ask Copilot earlier was, so if I want to change the color that for the class, which files whatever again. It's pretty much the same thing, but like, again, if you're the user, you can search these files up, so you can go to your control app and check your color delegator class. You can also check out. You can also directly click onto these files to check out the config sections. This was like one of the first things we did when navigating the code base, because then we could figure out like. Sorry, wrong that file. This one we realized these are hex values of colors. So this is where like, oh, this is probably where syntax highlighting is happening. Again, one of the things we want to show is that how it's non-deterministic. So one of the things that a previous chat showed us is that config dialog.py is useful in this. So I'm just gonna type that. But we would, if you were a beginner, you wouldn't know that. But you say like it is. Yeah, there's a couple methods it gives us in that place. And we can go through these and also show, like, do the comments, like the configuration changes that you might add in that one menu. If you do Command Shift F, you would. if you do command shift F, previously you would search up for choose color for, and actually one of the first times we used the prompt, that's the first thing it showed us. But besides that, our diagram is here. And I mean, you can see from the diagram, it's pretty much like the GitHub Copilot does get the basics with colorize.py and the functions. It, again, like when we were testing this, it does talk about load tag defs, which was talked about earlier, but in like last week's presentations. But load tag defs basically like adds a tag to the text to show like, oh, is this a comment, is this a function, is this a class, and then based on that tag, you know how to color it. And config highlight.def also Copilot talked about. This one I had to prompt in, but again, in previous versions. But yeah, I'm gonna go Cookie can show some debuggers.
Yeah, so as I transition, so one thing that we wanted to do was actually dig deeper. So the colors, what you'll realize real quick is that the colors do not change automatically. So actually, when I take a look at this, we see def is a keyword, right? So if I type in DE, it's black initially, and then as soon as I type in F, hopefully you can see that's orange. Is it too small?
Yeah, can you just do the, like, click the idle in the top left?
Yeah.
And then settings.
On that.
No, sorry, guys. Let's make like.
Okay. Yeah, so you can see as soon as I switch to F, it turns to orange. So we decided to take a look into how exactly this happens. So I'll kind of cut to the chase, but right now I actually have a, man, this is also really small. Give me 1 second. So I'll go ahead and change this, but you can see I kind of cut to the chase. We see recolorize here. It runs every 1 millisecond, and so instead of, oh man, wow. Okay. I have a bunch of breakpoints because okay, so here we can see as soon as I press F, we see we get cut to a breakpoint right here. This is within recolorize. It says every 1 millisecond, which is why I didn't press every single one of the DE and F. Otherwise, I would have to go to the breakpoints again and again and again. So we see in recolorize, it gets recolorize main gets called, and so if I go to the next breakpoint within recolorize, it says evaluates text and applies colorizing tags. So here we have this really long while loop, and to help me first read it, what I did, again, I used Copilot, so I went ahead and I asked it. And after reading all of this, can you see this? Do I zoom in?
Make it a little bit bigger.
Okay, yeah. So in here, after reading a lot of this, what I realized here is that the update method is then called when we modify the text, and may also stop colorizing to true. So let me go ahead and so once I go to that breakpoint, right here, I'll actually go ahead and step in to see what does update do. Because if I right click and click go to definition, it just tells me no definition found. Okay, so all I'll do is I'll step in, and I'll realize, oh look, we're inside tkinter. So now I know that tkinter is what actually does the coloring here. And so once I step out, we go to the next line, and when I finish, what you can see actually on the left, def turns to orange, and we can find exactly where the colors get changed. And yeah, I'll stop that. And anyone have any questions?
So are like the things that it decides to change the color and highlight, is that something that's set up in like the idle code base, or is that taken like from Python? Like could you like make it highlight other stuff as well?
Sorry, I guess I don't quite follow.
So like it like choose like def, like every time you type def it like changes the color. Is that something that's set in the idle code base? Like you could add more things that it would change the color for? Or is that taken from Python?
I believe this is something within the idle code base. I can actually look it up.
I believe you can add like a tag and then what you want that tag, when you want that tag to occur and then what color you want that tag And that was in the, Copilot didn't say, but it was in the low tag. Yeah.
What was the thing that actually happens every like 1 millisecond? Like, is it constantly checking for like depth or class?
Yeah,
or
the
something,
keyword
or-
and the tag, basically.
Oh, it checks for those keywords every
Yeah.
1 millisecond.
So
Oh.
yeah, this checks it every that many seconds.
Okay. Alright, any other questions here? Okay, sweet. Does someone have a question? Or was that?
I was just
Oh, yeah.
curious, if you type like DEF and then you added the next text of DEF and would it go through the same like process of uncolor it?
To uncolor it, I mean,
Yeah, I guess it goes through the same loop and if it's not diff, it's not gonna color it.
that's likely was the case, yeah.
Yeah, you just said over.
Yeah.
Alright everyone, let's quiet down and we'll go ahead and get started with the fourth presentation.
Alright, hello everyone. Let's start code walkthrough. The feature that we're covering is common and uncommon region. I'm sure most of you guys probably know what that is. Our group name is CSE 190 better than CSE 110. My name's Ed. This is Brian. This is Gabe. So yeah, we're gonna start off with the UML diagram, and we'll demo the feature later. So most of this feature is implemented in the format region class. In the format region class, we pass in an editor window object. That's because as you're like coding in your editor window, we want to be able to access all the text in that editor window. This also gives us access to a pretty key method, which is get selection indices. If you are highlighting something with your cursor in the editor window, you can use get selection indices to find out the start line and the end line for what's currently highlighted. We access that through format region's method called getRegin, and we then use setRegin to prepend 2 hashtags to whatever is currently highlighted to show that it's commented out. We also have the uncommon region event and common region event. These are basically to trigger just the commenting or uncommenting, and we can bind that to a menu option, which is created in mainMenu.py. And we also have a key binding for this, which is defined in the config-keys.definition file. And now we're going to get into some live demos starting with basic code navigation.
Okay, so I guess the first code navigation technique that one can use. Okay, I guess the first code navigation technique that one can use is a global search. So if we go to global search, we can search for keywords such as comment. Scroll through the results and we'll see that editor.py has a key binding called comment region bounded to the comment region event. And right below it is the uncomment region event. So if we control click or if we right click and we say go to definition, we'll see where this function is defined. And it's going to take us to format.py where these two functions are defined where common region is just to comment out selected region, and uncommon region event is an event that takes care of uncommenting a selected region. And from here we can right click again. We can go to references, or as command click, it'll show us the references. So here we can see that common region and uncommon region are used in 3 different places. First place being editor.py, where it's bounded to the key binding, format.py, where it's defined in the test format, where this functionality is tested. I guess for faster search, you can search by symbol. We can search for, we do Control T or Command T, and we can search for comment. And you'll see that the comment region event function will pop up as a search result, and it'll take you directly there. I guess it's just a faster way compared to global search. Something else you can do is look at outline view. So if you look at that, you can see the outline of this function and how it relates to other functions in this file and what class it belongs to. So if we look at outline view and click on follow cursor, and we click on common region event, it's going to take us here into the left panel. It's going to show us the outline and how it relates to other functions. I guess one more thing that you can do when exploring a large code base is looking at or looking for a readme function, a readme file. In this case, the idle folder has a readme file defined here, and here you can search for whatever feature that you're trying to explore. Here we search for comment. It's going to show which class it belongs to and where the 2 functions are that implements the comment and uncomment feature. Next one talk about debuggers.
To find out more about the common region event, uncommon region event, you can set a breakpoint at the start of each function. So set a breakpoint right here, here, then you run this debugger. Then create a new file, edge, random message coming out, and then call the function itself, coming out region. Then here we see it called get region. And if we step into it, see get region is a function of the format region class, and reading the documentation says return line information about the selected text region, and return tuple containing first index, last index, string representation of text in the list of text lines. You just keep stepping over that in. You can check what it returns exactly. In this entry, the debug console, you see this stuff I have there. One, and this list of lines here. You step over and go here. You see doing some lines. Check lines. Here, just the highlighted lines I highlighted, and then go through one iteration and call lines again. You see it's prepending 2 hashtags from each line, so go through the whole thing. Lines, you see that each line has been commented out, and if you play, go back to the file itself, you see that these lines are now commented, and then if you call uncommon region, same thing as common region event, they call it get region, and then this is a for loop. And in for loop, we see doing something to the line, and it checks its line, and then it checks the first 2 characters of the line, contain 2 hashtags or 1 hashtag, and it does a slice the line so that those hashtags don't exist. Each call line right now. You see that has 2 hashtags, so it enters this and it slices that out. Call lines. We see that this line is no longer commented. We don't do that for the rest of the line rules. And then call lines again. We see that in the list of lines, they're no longer commented. And we call it set region. step reading C. So function format region 5 document basically says place the text between the given indices, and that's what actually changes the lines themselves in the editor of the file. And play look like an editor of the file. Lines and all comment.
So I'm going to, it's like testing is a good way to learn the code, so I'm going to explain the unit testing for uncommon region and common region. So like for the common region part, first 3 lines is kind of just the basic setting for the unit testing. So you got the text, and then assert equal is for testing, and then we are going to use a tag to select what lines to comment. So you use tag add to select it and then comment it, and then you will see that the testing value will be same as the expecting value, so that you can see the code snippet has a comment, 2 comment sign over there. And then for uncommon region, it's like all the steps is kind of similar. It's like basic setting for unit testing, get the text and then select the lines. But uncommon things is kind of different. It's like because you need to first comment it and then uncommon. And after that, you will see the previous comment code snippet will become uncommented. And also there is another case that what if you comment the comment? Yeah, so it's like you need to if you want to uncomment it, it's like set the uncommon, and then you will get the comment that only have 1 comment sign. And how about if there is only one comment sign? It's like when you click uncommon, it will get rid of it to become the uncommon code snippet. Yeah. So this is for testing part. Questions?
I think that in the text file, so it's file text format, like line 138, there's like a small patch object that gets imported. I was wondering if you guys might know what that is, because it's kind of, I haven't encountered that before in the code base.
Y'all can even like go to it in the VS Code, just to quickly try to give an answer. It's okay if you don't know the answer.
Yeah, I think like right here, like right above the breakpoint, like it's a small patch object on line 538.
Oh, here?
Yeah, also the ask tab with, I wasn't sure like kind of what these mean in terms of like this.
Yeah, I don't think that's for common uncommon region.
Yeah.
It looks like Cabify region.
Okay, right.
Any other? Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned probably like 3 or 4 ways that you were able to find the comment region event. I was wondering like what was probably the best one for you, and how are you certain that you're in the right method after going through those?
For me personally, usually global search is my go-to method, and then I guess you can honestly just comment out anything that seems important in that, and then recompile and try it again. Try out the comment out feature, and if it crashes, then you probably wrote something in the correct area. So that would be my personal way.
I was wondering if you guys ended up trying to figure out the different kinds of characters, so like the pound sign should be like a letter, like an alphanumeric character. And did you guys ever do that, like in your tutor?
I think we tried to add another pound sign. I guess that's one way to find out if it's in the right place.
Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk to you about a really interesting feature that IDLib has, surprisingly, since no one uses it. And our team is called Bulldog Devs. My name is Salman, Jackson, Ian, and John. Imagine it's 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night and your due date is 11:59 and you have a Python homework. And you want to start writing the code since that's the time you want to start, right? And is it working? Fantastic. Just think about that night. Just think about it for now.
Average student.
Amazing. And you open your editor, and for some reason you start using IDLib. And you write a function, and you go to the next line, and it doesn't indent. How bad does that feel? But let me tell you something, and this is so interesting that this feature is actually such an important section of your IDEs. Because I did research, there are 2-3 articles in GitHub Society that are written by many, that are basically accepted by many developers and written by many famous ones, that says that your speed of coding, your coding pace, can be reduced by 30 to 50% if you don't have auto indentation. And that's the function we're going to be talking about. Today, we're going to be talking about this feature that IDLib has. It's just a function in editor.py, so it's not that big of a, I guess, feature to talk about in that depth. But I'm going to be talking about the 3 main functionalities that this function specifically has. Then we're going to show you how we found it. It was actually kind of hard because back then it was a different location. What is it?
You can spoil my part.
Okay, I'm not going to spoil it. But it has an interesting story. We can start doing the editing. Okay, so the first feature that this function has is actually called initialization and selection deletion. Or deleting, whatever. And so basically when you write a code and you select it and you click enter, it deletes it and it goes to the next line. And that's such an amazing feature that IDLib has. Now you're going to say all the text editors usually have that, sure, but IDLib developers basically had to sit down and make this function because it wasn't a thing in their text editor. And we found it. There's also another feature that this beautiful function has, which is called indentation calculation, which is basically that this function goes through your code in the last line and it sees that where was your indentation and basically checks if like for example your line has 1 indentation, when you go to the next line it's going to give you 1 indentation again. And this is such an important indentation automation that they have. Because if you didn't have that, every single time you have to click tab. And imagine if you had 5 for loops in each other, you have to do 5 tabs every single time. And that's such a time save, right? And there's the last feature that is really important, which is white space stripping. Well, basically when you're writing something, for some reason, I sometimes just click space to think. And I never end up having a thought, but then I'm going to click enter, and it goes to the next line. And I thought about it, it does delete those white spaces, because now if we click backspace, one more time, you go back to the semicolon. Wow, IDLib has such a smart function. Now, these are the main functionalities at first, but then it also has a huge part that it has so many if statements and elif statements that are going to check to see if it needs to give one more indentation extra, which usually comes from a semicolon, or if you're continuing a line, if you open the parentheses or bracket and you need to go to the next line and continue your code, because sometimes we write too much shit in our functions and we need to go to the next line, and that's what happens. Now I'm gonna give the microphone to Ian, and he's gonna talk to you guys about something interesting about it.
Okay. So as Sam kind of alluded to, we had some interesting ways of finding the code for this feature. And you know how in idle, most of the time, each feature has its own file? But if we look here, for auto indent, we don't see anything. However, when we look online, there was some things we saw that mentioned that there was some sort of specific file for auto indentation.
So we took in global search. You can see there's quite a lot of hits. However, most of them are talking about auto indent py, which doesn't exist anymore. So looking into this, if we open changelog, you can see, wow, 2001, right? I think this code is older than most of the people in this room, right? So obviously, one important thing to know is that if you see something online, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. You need to double check with what's in front of you in the code base. So we're trying to figure out why is there no auto indent anymore? So we look further in. You can see here, news2x.txt. Here, it says here, auto indent was merged into editor window. It's pretty important to know, right? That's why you no longer see the code in its own file. And when did this happen? This happened in release 1.2, 2006, right? Yeah, this is really old. So now we're trying to figure out where is this code actually implemented. So if we see here in editor py, there are these two comments. Begin auto indent code, and we go here, it's end. So basically we know that the function is implemented within these two lines, or within this block of code. But you know, since our code is kind of implemented in this way, we can't use traditional techniques like checking the outline, right? Because if we look, it doesn't really say anything. We can see things like indent searcher and get like indent, but I mean, it doesn't really tell us exactly, like, there's no set class for auto indent. So what our group had to do is look through these lines of code manually. Looking through here, checking these functions, you know, quite a lot, right? But eventually we were able to figure out and deduce that this main new line event and indent event was the main function that deals with indentation when you create a new line. And if we search this up, you can see it's being called here in highshell.py. And looking at the comments from here, basically saying every time you're entering a new line, you will call this function. Right? Here, 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 and here. Yeah. So that's how we figured out where this code is written and how it's being called. Okay, none.
And for the diagram, it's actually extremely basic. Everything is contained within editor window. So if I have to put just the class and just a giant box that says editor window. And we're gonna make this more interesting. In config.py, there's you got the hotkeys in there, which does actually have three key press events. Those are your enter, your return, and your delete. They call specific functions within editor window, specifically smart backspace event, smart indent event, and new line indent event with the indentation parameters. It's basically just setting a tab with, and of course, we're doing all the tkinter text switches stuff. That's actually pretty much it. It's just an editor window.
All right, so last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna actually go do some experimental code change. So first of all, before I get to that, how are you guys doing today? Good. Good? Okay, that's good. You guys are still alive. That's good. Still there. All right, so let's get rid of this stuff. Okay, we're gonna go, so when I'm in the window, I'll first show you, when I'm in idle, I might be, you know, sometimes I kind of like to talk to the computer. I'm like, hello, Mr. Computer. And, you know, if I, like we saw before, if I do a function and I do a colon, then it's going to auto-indent it. But sometimes I'm talking to the computer, I'm like, hey, can you please indent? And it doesn't indent. Like I asked it for it to indent, but it didn't indent. So we're going to actually change it so that when I say indent, the code indents. Without even, you know, without having a colon or having a function, just when I say indent, I want it to indent, right? So how are we going to do that? Well, let's go to this function. In the function, if we scroll down to the bottom of it, we have the section of code where when there is a function or an if statement, basically when that exists, it's going to create an indent. And so if we go to is block opener, we see this returns true when the last character is a colon. So basically it's just checking if there's a colon. That happens in all those cases. And so we're just going to change this up a little bit. We're going to first make sure we get the last. We don't want all the code that before we just want the last line, the most recent line. So we're going to do self.code line split lines. We're going to get the last one of those. And then we're going to do an OR statement over here. and we're gonna check for the word indent. Indent in the last line. And also, I'll just add one more. I'm gonna also check for if there's a don't in there. You'll see. I'll show you what the don't is. But so if we run this, we run the editor. Now if I'm talking to my computer, I'm like, hello, can you please indent? Now I press indent, and there's an indent. That's pretty cool. I think that's pretty cool. Maybe not super useful, but you know. And then furthermore, I can say thank you and continue on. But then if I don't want it to indent, I'm like, hey, please don't indent this time. That's where the don't I put in comes in, and it doesn't indent. So either way, I want indent, don't indent, then I can get an indent. So, anyways, that is the experimental code change. That's our presentation. Thank you guys for taking the time to listen. Now, if you guys have any questions, please let us know.
How dare you ask a question? What's your question?
Should you go to the idle like window?
Yeah.
We see hey please don't indent probably like turn to green to like
That's their fault, the other team. They changed the colorize function and it doesn't work.
You want to turn orange instead?
Yeah, so that reason why that's there is because of the little apostrophe. That's actually like text. It's basically a string in Python. If you have one, little single quote like that, not apostrophe single quote, then it'll be a string. So that's why it changes the color.
Good question.
The second question would be like, do you think if we have like indent.py would be helpful to improve code constructor?
I mean, think about it. It existed, right? Did it? Yes. And then they tried to merge it into editor.py. I guess it was a bit of a time complexity issue that they did that, or maybe it was just a better code readability or anything. I think the feature is really basic. It's literally like when you start driving with your car and your car automatically locks the door. It's that basic, but I don't think it's needed to be like that, unless if you want to add a lot of more features and you want to have a separate entity. And this substrata of the editor.py is not giving you enough space for that to show.
Yeah.
Can you press enter?
Yeah.
So it looks like it did indent though.
So yeah, so it still keeps the same current indent. So if I show you, if I ask it to please indent, then it's going to indent again.
But amazing question.
That's a good question. So
yes.
So this is from the indent from before at the top. Because of that one, it stays. So if I go down here and I say don't indent, then this time it'll keep indenting. So it just keeps the current. If I don't, I mean don't indent again.
But you know whose fault that is? The indentation calculation function. The one that I explained. No, actually. Because if you don't have anything, if you say don't indent, you're basically, that statement that we said is not true. So the function is going to just work as exactly the same as it used to work, right? And we don't have any columns, or we don't have anything that would cause an indentation, so it's just going to go to the same line.
To add on to that, the indentation, like how it actually works in the function is it strips off all the white space for the new line, and then it adds the indent from before, and then modifies that indent. So when you're saying please don't indent, it just doesn't do the modification.
I see. Can you go back to the code part that you changed?
So I just added this line and then added the first. So indent in the last line and the don't is not.
What if you do something like, what if you write like, I don't like finals, please indent?
I don't like finals, please indent. then it would, you're right, that one would not indent. So that would not get the correct functionality. So you're good. You're good. You want to improve, do some refactoring.
What do you probably have like a double
These are amazing questions. I think this is for you guys to and you guys are going to get extra